What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to do a deep dive into putting a collection view in a table view cell, and that achieves this carousel-like effect that you see here. We'll talk about proper architecture with view models and how you get the stuff in to this collection view, and then more importantly, the piece that everybody overlooks, we'll talk about actual interaction. So if I go ahead and tap on one of these tiles here, we actually use custom delegates to get that call back to the controller and show a pertinent alert here. So if you're into this, if it sounds good to you, make sure you start by destroying that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. If you're new to the channel and into iOS, hit subscribe while you're at it. That all said, let's get into the video. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with the app template under iOS, and let's go ahead and call this a carousel for our project name. Make sure your language is set to Swift and your interface is storyboard and lifecycle is UIKit. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. I will toss it onto my desktop. And first things first, we're going to jump into our view controller file as soon as I expand our Xcode window here, and we'll get straight away into it. So in order to actually get a collection view to show up inside of a table view, we first need to create the table view and make sure that is showing up on our view controller. So we're going to start by creating a table view here. We're going to end up needing a custom table view cell, but let's just go ahead and create it, set a background, and make sure it's actually showing up on our simulator. So we'll go ahead and just create it in the anonymous closure pattern here. I'll go ahead and also register a pretty vanilla table view cell so we can actually see something before we get a little more intricate. And let's see, we want to make sure we go ahead and add it as a sub view. So we'll go ahead and say table view. We'll also assign the table view's data source. That's what I'm looking for. So data source, we want to make sure we conform to said protocol, which is the data source. And this is going to have two required functions, so number of rows. We'll go ahead and hard code this to be 10, and then we'll also go ahead and say cell for row add index path, and in here we want to go ahead and, whoops, that's not the function we want cell for row at index path, and in here what we want to do is dequeue the appropriate cell, so we're going to say dequeue a reusable cell with an identifier of cell for index path. Go ahead and return the cell there. And we'll also go ahead and start by just setting some random text on here so we can see stuff. So we'll go ahead and say hello world. And before we give this a run, let's also go ahead and make sure we give our table a frame by overriding view to layout sub views. Go ahead and do that, and we'll say the table view's frame will be view.bounds. Let's go ahead and pick a simulator. I'll stick with the 12 Pro Max, and let's go ahead and give this a run in our simulator here, and make sure that our table view is in fact showing up. Let's see what's going on. Alright, there is our app that's launching. Bear with it, likes to be nice and slow. Then we'll go ahead and get into creating the custom cell, collection view, and our models. Alright, bear with it. Should be coming up pretty soon. There it is. Alright, so we've definitely got our table view looking awesome. The next thing that we want to go ahead and do is create a custom table view cell that embeds a collection view inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file here. It's going to be a Cocoa Touch class, and we're going to go ahead and subclass a table view cell. Now I'm going to go ahead and call this a collection table view cell, basically a table view cell that's going to house a collection inside of it. Go ahead and create it, and we'll get this right here. Now, what do we want in here? Well, first things first, we want an identifier we can use to register this cell to our table view. We want to go ahead and override the initializer, the one that has a style and a reuse identifier, which is, let me make sure we can find the right one. If your autocomplete isn't cooperating, looks like we have a typo here. That's why we have an issue. If your autocomplete isn't cooperating, you can go ahead and hit Command B, and it'll start to cooperate. We'll go ahead and override this here, passing in the respective parameters. And then we also need to bring in the required initializer. We're going to want to lay out the collection view, so we'll override layout sub views like that. We'll call super on it, super layout subviews. And now we want to go ahead and actually connect this table view cell to our table view in the controller. So we'll jump back here, and now we're going to register this kind of cell with this kind of cell dot identifier. And down here where we're dequeuing it, we don't want to set the text label anymore, but we're going to say go ahead and dequeue a cell with the new identifier, which is going to be the class name dot identifier. I will go ahead and downcast it, so we'll say as our particular cell. And if we're not able to, cast to that, we can just go ahead and say fatal error, which will crash the app, but we'll always be able to downcast to this. It should never fail, so that's all right. The other thing we'll go ahead and do in our actual table view cell now is create a collection view. So I'm going to add some comments to go ahead and organize this a little bit. So these are our initializers. This is our layout here. So we'll go ahead and say this is layout. And then we're going to want some collection view related functions. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to be our collection view marker. And now let's go ahead and create that collection view. So we're going to say it is a private let collection view, and this is going to be of type, let's go ahead and lowercase that, of type UI collection view. And we're going to create it in this anonymous closure here. So we can once again say let collection view is going to be a collection view with a frame and a layout. The frame will start off as 0, and we want to make sure we instantiate a layout up here before we actually try to use it. And we're going to stick with a UI collection view flow layout, UI collection view flow layout, just like that. Now we're going to want our collection view to be horizontal, so we can actually specify the direction on here, and we can say it's horizontal. And you can also specify some other things like the section inset, which we will do, which is the margin for the section. And let's go ahead and specify this here. It's going to be UI edge inset. Let's try that again. UI edge in sets with a top, left, right, and bottom. Maybe we'll say 2 on each side. And now that we've created this collection view here, we can actually go ahead and return it. Now we're going to want to register a cell to this. So what I'll go ahead and do is create another class, which will be a custom collection view cell. So let's go ahead and do that here. So we'll go ahead and right click, new file, and we want a Cocoa Touch class, and this is going to subclass a UI collection view cell. And this is going to be, let's go ahead and call this a tile collection view cell, since we're just going to go with that naming convention. Go ahead and continue here. And we'll come back to this to customize it and show how to customize it with view models. But let's just go ahead and at least add an identifier and override the initializer with a frame. And we'll just set a color in here. So I'll go ahead and say the content view's background color will be system blue. And we'll go ahead and override the required initializer as well. So now that we have this custom collection view back in our table view, if we can find it, there we are. We want to make sure we go ahead and register this cell. So we're going to say collection view. We're going to say register a cell class. So the class name dot self for the class name dot identifier, which we just went ahead and added in this tile collection view cell. And now that we have this, we want to start adding this collection view as a subview to our table view cell. So we can say content view, add subview, collection view. We also want to configure our collection view's delegate to be self, as well as the data source to be self. And we also want to give it a background color. So we'll give the content view a background color of system background, and we'll also give that background color on our collection view up here right before we return it in the anonymous closure. We'll say its background color is system background. So bear with me, almost done. So here we're getting 2 errors because we're not actually conforming to the delegate and data source for the collection view. You want to do that here in the table view cell. So I'll go ahead and say UI collection view delegate and UI collection view data source. And now we want to bring in the required function. So we'll say number of items for the collection view, which is this one here. We'll just hard code maybe 10 for now. We're going to hook it up to view models to be a dynamic number. And then we also want the cell for item, in which case we want to go ahead and dequeue the appropriate cell from the collection view itself. So it's going to be dequeue a reusable cell with our tile collection view cell dot identifier for the given index path, and then we want to downcast it as our particular type of class. So we'll do that here. In the else case, similar to the casting for the table view cell, we'll just go ahead and say fatal error. And we need to say guard here since we are unwrapping and biting it. And finally, we can say return a cell. All right, so let's see what error we have. All right, that went away. And let's see what else we need to do. So let me go ahead and give this a run and let's see what happens. We're kind of incomplete. We're like halfway there, but let's just see how we're doing. So right now, I don't actually see anything here, and that's actually expected because we've added this collection view as a subview to our table view cell, but notice we never gave it a frame. So in layout subviews, I'm going to say collection views frame is going to be content views bounds. That way, the collection view will take up the entire space in the table view cell. And now we're starting to see something. So these are a bunch of different table view rows. That's how we can scroll each of these horizontally, but there's a couple problems. First problem I see here, the sizing is kind of screwed up. We want this to be taller, and we also don't want this to be hard-coded with the number of cells, both in the table view and collection view. We want it to be driven by our actual view models. So we're going to come back to our view controller, and I'm just going to create the model up here, just for the sake of making this nice and simple. So what we can go ahead and do is first create a cell model for our table view cell, and actually a smarter idea is let's go into this table view cell and I'll create it above here. So we'll create a collection table view cell view model. Now if you think about what this table view cell needs to configure itself, it needs a collection of view models to hand to the collection view. So what we want to go ahead and do is we're going to add a function on here called configure with a single view model, which is going to be a collection table view cell view model. And we're going to want a tile collection view cell view model too. So I'm going to jump into here and create this right above this so we keep it organized. All right. And now what do we want in here? So in our case, I'm just going to have every single collection view cell show a name as well as a background color, which will be of type UI color, just like that. And we want this collection view cell to be able to be configured with a single one of these view models. So we'll say configure with view model, and this will be the tile collection view cell view model. Notice the naming convention. I take the view name and I just suffix it with view model. So let's go back to our table view cells view model, and this is going to have a sub array called view models, and this is going to be an array of the tile collection view cell view model. Now that we have this here on our actual table view cell, we're going to hold a private instance of our collection view cell view models, which will be empty by default. And our collection view will be driven by that array. So here we'll say view models.count. And here we can go ahead and say cell configure with view models and the nth collection view cell view model. And the configure function, we're going to say self.viewModels is going to be viewModel singular dot viewModels. Let's go ahead and try that again. There we are. And then after we've assigned those view models, we can tell the collection view to go ahead and reload itself. All right, so now that we've got this whole thing set up, back in our collection view cell, what we want to go ahead and do is we're getting a couple of things in the view model here, namely the text and the background color. So I'm just going to start with the background color. We'll say content views background color is going to be viewModel.background color. We'll do the name in a moment, but I just want to have something to start show up on our simulator. We'll get rid of the blue background color we hard coded there. And let's see what else we need to do. I think we're almost about there to a point where we can see stuff. So let's go back to our controller. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is we want to have an array of view models here for our table view as well. So we'll say private let view models, plural, is going to be an array of our collection table view cell view models. And we'll go ahead and create only one in here. We'll go ahead and say, whoops, this should be a view model. We'll go ahead and create one of these here. We'll go ahead and say this takes an array of our tile collection view cell view models. So I'll create multiple of these as well. I'll say tile collection view cell view model, and I'm just going to randomly make these up. So maybe we'll say apple. This will be system blue, and we'll just go ahead and copy and paste these a few times and just change up the values. So system red here, we'll say system yellow, system pink, and let's see, what other colors can I think of? Green, and we'll stick with orange. And I'll also go ahead and change this to maybe be Google, NVIDIA, Intel, Facebook, and Microsoft. And now that we have this array here, what we want to do is we want our table view to be driven by it. So number of rows in our actual table view is going to be viewModels.count. And what we can now do here is we can say get the view model singular from our array of table view cell view models, and we can tell the cell go ahead and configure yourself with the single view model. So let's go ahead and give this a run. Let's see what issues we have. So this is saying we can't actually use this type here, cannot convert value of type, which makes sense. Let's see what's going on. So our view models up here is an array of collection table view cell view model, which is correct. So let's see what's going on down here. Here we're saying this is a collection table view cell view model. Let's come back down here to the configure function. This should take in a collection table view cell view model. That's what we want this to take in. All right, go ahead and hit Command B. Let's see if I named something incorrectly. This is looking good. Let's jump back to our controller. Looks like that error has disappeared. Let's go ahead and give that a run, and let's see if something starts to show up. All right, looking good. So we have one table view row, and we have these different colored collection view cells. So the next thing we want to do is actually show the proper sizing here. We want each of these tiles to be nice and large like we saw in the beginning of the video. So there's two sizes we need to adjust. The first size we need to adjust is the height of the table view cell itself. So we could potentially hard code this. So I can go ahead and say height for row at index path, and I believe it's a part of the table view delegate. So we're going to go ahead and assign the table views delegate to be self, and we're also going to go ahead and conform to it. So we can say table view cell delegate, or rather UI table view delegate is what I was looking for. And now there's a function on here called height for row at index path, and we can go ahead and say go ahead and make this view frame width divided by 2. Go ahead and do that, and you'll notice that it actually looks different now. The height of this table view cell is taller, but we don't want our actual tiles to be this large, or we want them to be larger rather, and we don't want them to be vertical like this. So the next thing we want to do is in the table view cell, we want to change the sizing of the collection view cells. To do that, we want to also conform to the UI collection view flow layout delegate, if I can find it, delegate flow layout rather. And this allows us to set a item size via a function that's going to be size for item at index path, where we can return a CG size with a width and a height. So we'll go ahead and call this size and this size as well. So let's go ahead and calculate size. It'll be a CG float of content view frame size width potentially divided by 3. So we can go ahead and say this is the width here, which we'll pass in there, and we'll say the height is the width divided by 1.5. Now let's go ahead and give this a run, and let's see if the sizing is gonna look a little better now. All right, looking much better. We probably still don't want this to be this small. We probably want it to be a little larger, so I'll go ahead and say instead of divided by 3, maybe we'll say 2.5, and here we'll say 1.1, so it's taller and wider. You can play with these numbers and, use them as you need, but now we've got something that's looking a lot better. The next thing that we want to do is we want there to be labels inside of each of these collection view cells, and we also want to be able to tap on each of these cells or tiles, and we want something to happen. So I'm going to jump into our custom collection view cell, and we're going to first add a label in here. So we'll go ahead and define that label. It's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be a private let label of type UI label. We're going to create it with this block pattern here. We'll say label, UI label, go ahead and say label. I'll go ahead and give it a text color of white. Go ahead and give it a text alignment of center. I will also give it a system font style and just make the font size and weight a little bigger. So we'll say 20 and medium. Now that we've created a label, we can go ahead and add it. So I'm going to say content view, add subview for the label. So we can say add subview on the content view for the label. And in the configure function, we're going to say labels text is going to be the view models. On the view model, we want to assign it with the name, just like that. And we want to make sure we lay out our label, aka give it a frame. So we're going to override layout subviews. We're going to call super on it. And we're going to say label.frame is going to be content view.bounds. So we'll say content view.bounds. Go ahead and give that a run, and you should hopefully see your labels now in each of these tile looking cells, which you do, which is awesome, looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and talk about how we actually tap on these collection view cells and get the call back to our controller, since that's the appropriate way to handle it. But before we do that, let's make things look a little nicer. So each of these tiles, let's say we want it to have a rounded corner. So in the contents view, I'm going to go ahead and add a corner radius of maybe 6. And I'll also go ahead and add a nice border. So we'll say that the border width is maybe 1.5. And we'll also go ahead and say the border color is going to be a UI color dot secondary label dot CG color. That's basically going to be like a light grayish kind of color. So if you go ahead and give it a run, maybe it's a little too heavy actually. So what we could probably actually do is we could use the quaternary label, which will be even more light. So let's go ahead and give that a run. And I think that's looking a little better. And it's nice and rounded now, not as pointy of corners. Let's take a look at how we can actually tap on these collection view cells and get the results back to our controller. Now, a collection view cell delegate back in our table view cell, we can conform and call the function did select item at index path. We'll tell the collection view to deselect it, in other words, unhighlight it. And now we know which view model was selected because we hold an array of view models on this table view cell. We can get it with the index path, but the problem herein lies now that we're in the table view cell. We actually want the call to go to the controller. So now we're going to create a custom delegate here, which will be the name of the cell, suffixed by delegate with any object on it. And we can go ahead and create a function like so. We'll say collection table view cell did, we can say did tap item maybe. We'll say did tap item with view model, and this is going to be a single tile view model like that. And now we're going to have an instance of this delegate on here, which is going to be a week. We'll say week var delegate will be the delegate for this cell. Once again, take a note of the naming convention here. We take the name of the class and just suffix it with delegate. And down here, now what we can do is we can go ahead and use the delegate to actually pass in the view model that was tapped. And back in our controller, we can go ahead and actually handle this. So I'll go ahead and say the cell that we dequeue, its delegate is self. That's going to give us an error because we need to conform to that delegate. So I'll go ahead and actually do that with an extension here. We'll go ahead and add an extension onto view controller of type collection table view cell delegate. Let's see if we can find it. Collection table view cell delegate. and this is going to have a single function. And what do we actually want to do? Well, for the sake of example, let's just create a alert, and we'll go ahead and just show whichever item was selected. So we'll create a alert controller with a item title, and this will be view model dot name. And let's see, view model dot name. My autocomplete loves to not work when I do videos. We'll say this is an alert, and we'll say you successfully got the selected item. And now that we've created this, let's go ahead and just present our alert. Animated will be true, and we'll also want to make sure we say alert dot add a action to dismiss this alert if it shows up. And we'll just say this is dismiss with a style of cancel and a handler of nil. So that was a lot of code. Let's go ahead and run it, make sure it worked, and then we'll quickly recap here. All right, so we've got our tiles. It's basically a collection view in a table view. We can scroll through these, and let's see, let's try and pick one of these. Let's say we wanted to select Intel here. I can tap on it, and if you take a look there, we've got our alert showing up. So let's do a recap. So we've essentially got 3 files here. I'll put them all next to each other. The first one here is our view controller. Let's move this one up. Let's see if it decides to move. There it is. The first one here is a view controller. We have a table view in here. We have an array of view models which will drive our table view cells. Now we only have one in here, a view model for a collection table view cell, which holds a subarray for the collection views view models. Then we set up our table views delegate data source, we give it a frame, we use the view model to drive the number of rows as well as DQ. We only have one section and one type of cell, so we can just assume that they will all be, the collection type. And then we also hard code the height to be the width divided by 2. Now we also conform to that cell's delegate, which we'll look at in a moment, so we can proxy back the interactions in that view to the controller. Speaking of the table view cell, we have a table view cell which is named collection table view cell. Its proper view model is defined up here along with its delegate. The collection table view cell, as the name implies, holds a collection view. There's also an array of the view models, which will drive the collection view here. We set up the collection view, we lay it out, and we configure it with the particular collection view data pieces, which are the view models, the number of items, and we also DQ the cell. And then we have a configure function on this actual table view cell to pass in the appropriate view model. And finally, we've got the collection view cell, which has a label for the name. All these cells have identifiers just to simplify our life in terms of registering them. We've got a view model here, which will drive the actual look and feel of the collection view cell's background color and label text. We go ahead and do some styling of the corner radius here. We add the subview for label and give it a frame, and we configure here. So this is kind of the bare bones of how a lot of these carousels are built out. Now, yes, you can definitely use compositional layout as well. I'm aware that's, kind of the more modern way to go about doing it. However, this approach is still very, very pertinent and very common across, tons of apps. So if you guys enjoyed the video, have gotten this far, definitely drop a like down below. Let me know in the comments if you want to see anything in particular, if you have video suggestions. Do you guys use collection views and table view cells? Do you set them up differently? Let me know. Also, let me know if you're into Swift UI. I can do this in Swift UI as well. It's a lot different in Swift UI in terms of how this is set up. So that said, also hit subscribe if you're new to the channel and haven't done so already. Thanks again for watching. I shall see you guys in the next one.